Okay, welcome everybody to the Sports Interval. This is another episode hosted by Phila Bitterhout. Today our guest is none other than a Springbok halfback and Sunwolves scrumhalf. Rudy Paige joins us all the way from Johannesburg. Rudy Paige, man, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. Obviously quite bored currently, but fantastic is happy family in this tough time.
No, fair enough. Speaking of tough time, how's the COVID-19 situation treated you personally?
Listen, I would rather play rugby than being a full-on parent. The little one is keeping me quite busy. So I don't know how women and mothers and stuff do it. This is really tough. But other than that, I spend time with my family since the last year. We've quite actually been apart for some time. So happy to be with everyone.
Nice, man. Nice. Tell me, now you're currently with the Sunwolves in Japan. I mean, your journey did not start there as a rugby player. I mean, tell us a bit about your background, where you in there.
Yes, I grew up in a small town in Western Cape, Heidelberg. Probably about 8,000 people. What's happening there? Then went on to George to Otaniqua High School. And from there, the Lions obviously took me where I spent about years in the juniors, where I actually loved it. And then moved on to the Bulls. I spent most of my career and most of my rugby. Since then, I've just actually been trying to get as much experience overseas with Clermont, and then obviously moved on to the South, trying to broaden my perspective on the game. Just trying to see how different people do it. And I think when you grow up, you think the way you understand rugby is the only way. And I've hear that there's many ways to think about the game and to do things. So I've actually been really privileged and lucky for the last year to these different cultures and ways of doing stuff.
Yeah, nice, man. So speaking of experience, I mean, you were part of the World Cup team in 2015. That experience of representing your country at a World Cup stage.
I think it's obviously the dream since you were lighty. So I think obviously being selected, for me, I was just trying to be a sponge and make sure that I suck up as much info as possible. Knowing that obviously with Ruan and Fourie ahead of me, I knew I'm not going to play a lot. But for me, it was quite important that I suck up of their knowledge and just understand the way they do things and what it takes to obviously be as long as they have been. And I think that has actually put me into good stead for my career. And I must say it was probably pretty much the best experience of my life so far.
Vic, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah. I want to know, how was the sort of helter-skelter to get a flight out of Japan, or did you not have any trouble getting one back to South Africa? Because we left Japan overseas trip in Australia and New Zealand, and once we were there, like obviously the Japanese government closed the borders to Japan, so we were not allowed to go back. We were stuck for 4 weeks in Australia.
Wow.
Playing our home games in Australia, and then I think our government obviously said on the Saturday they were closing the borders on the Wednesday, I think. So we had to get flights out of Australia to South Africa as soon as possible to get into the country before the borders got closed. So it was a bit of a hectic 4 days there in Australia, just trying to catch a flight and make sure that you come back and not worry about other stuff.
Yeah, just from my side, Paige, you've obviously had a super season with the Sisa. You guys didn't get the results that you've been wanting, obviously. But just one question for me. You played now in Super Rugby in a couple of teams, and you obviously for the Boks. And now you also had some time in Pro 14. How would you compare Pro 14 to obviously?
I think it's people's perspective. Obviously, is way different about the two competitions. I think Pro 14 for me was quite tough. I think it challenged you differently as a player. Not the condition so much, but I think play a Leinster and you play a Munster, they're not as flashy as a Blues or a Hurricanes, but it's like a slow grind. So if you're not playing in the right half of the field, you find yourself trailing by either 15 or 12 points without noticing it. So where in Super Rugby, there's a lot of errors, I think, a lot of mistakes. So you're always in the game. Whether you're trailing by 10 or 12 points, teams do give you a lot of opportunity to come back into the game. Where in Pro 14, if they start chipping away from you, it's tough to come back and play a Leinster or Edinburgh. The average age to be 30 or 28. So the Pro 14's got a lot of players that's been around the block, that understands how to win games, understands how to play in different situations. And I think that's tough, It's tough playing against the experienced side that knows how to win games.
Absolutely. And have you been to Rapangi?
I think the sun is actually the other side of Tokyo. So they make sure that it's actually extremely tough to get to Rapangi from where we were based.
Speaking of Tokyo, you currently now, obviously the halfback for the Sunwolves, but there's another South African who's your 10 currently with the Sunwolves, Garth April. Tell me how much of an influence or how much of an impact that is for you both playing for the same team in a foreign country, obviously.
Yeah, I think obviously Japan has got a different outlook on the game. They try and be as innovative as possible with the resources and the players they do have, which is quite an interesting way of going about it. And I think Garth April, obviously, I played with him as a junior at the Lions, and I think he's probably one of the most talented players I've played with, ability to kick off both feet, to take on tight five, extremely fast. So I've actually enjoyed playing with him, and I think I do understand the way he wants to play. Not putting him in a box is probably the best thing for me. Since he's been at the Sunwolves, he's had some freedom, and I think once he's got the ball in his hands, he was taking.
I hear that you guys actually, when you don't want the opposition to actually find out what your game plan is, what your next move will be, you guys start communicating in Afrikaans. Is that true?
Yeah, we did start in Afrikaans, but then the team actually had a banned voice. To not speak as much Afrikaans because we got so many cultures in our team.
Yeah.
So it was interesting, I must say, especially once you start playing with some of the Japanese boys and when you get tiny, it was a challenge. But I must say now that you've been through it, you're actually so much better for it.
Yeah, I want to know, Rudy, how's Japan like now after the World Cup towards rugby? Did you see a noticeable change?
I've played a lot of, obviously I've started young in South Africa, but the fan base, we were a struggling team in Super Rugby, but there was still 22, 25,000 sellout stadiums. That was really enjoyable, playing in front of packed crowds again and training where people are interested in what you guys are doing in the brand and the franchise. So yes, it was really such a good experience.
Quickly, Rudy, the role of the third scrum half in World Cup teams is one where you get some calling, especially one like Eddie Jones felt like there was no need to have a third scrum half. And we know that it's a specialist position and tight head on the rugby field. Do you think that, after the World Cup experience, the Eddie Jones experience...
from each coach on, because I also signed the previous short-term stint at Clermont in France. So now just trying to wait it out and make sure that I enjoy the family as much as possible and being open to a move after that.
Fantastic, man. Any more questions, guys?
No, just all the best, Rudy, and keep watching from this side, brother.
Thanks, guys, man. Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us, mate. We truly appreciate you taking your time out.
Cheers, guys. Stay safe.
Cheers. Stay safe. Wash your hands. We'd like to thank Rudy Paige for joining us on Interval. Now we move on to our next segment, focusing on international rugby news. And then we're going to jump into dissecting our Super Rugby teams in the first 7 and seeing basically where they come short, what they can improve on, what's made some of the teams as good as they are, and what some of the teams as poor as they have performed in the Super Rugby competition in 2020. I know we don't have much to work with, but obviously the 7 rounds is what we're currently working with for our base. So, guys, just to start off things. Current news: Stuart Lancaster has put his hand up and he's basically said going Warren Gatland for the 2021 British and Irish Lions tour. Smooth, what are your thoughts in what Lancaster has? Because, I mean, we know Lancaster had a poor Rugby World Cup with England in 2015, improved immensely with Leinster and what he's done with Leinster over the couple of years. What are your thoughts in Lancaster joining?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm a little on the fence about it. I'm not entirely sure if Gatland's really a person like Stuart Lancaster. I feel like the British and Irish Lions tend to get dominated by English personalities, as is, because of the players that they. Lancaster, I mean, he did coach England, coached them at the home World Cup. Fine, it was the worst performance by a host nation. But look, he became a head coach at Leinster thereafter. And then, I can't, if you're Gatland and you want to come to South Africa and make a real impact, I think someone like Mitch, for me, would make a much better assistant, because not only does he know the English, he knows the South Africans very, very well. He knows the South African culture. He's lived here for many, many years. So I would say Mitch over Stuart Lancaster if you must tinker with your technical team.
Fair. But Vic, I want to bring you in here. I mean, playing against Leinster in the Pro 14. I mean, what impact do you think Lancaster has had over the past couple of years with these Pro 14 sides?
Yeah, I think the most importantly for any Pro 14 side is to understand the conditions we play in. I mean, Rudy Paige said it earlier. These teams know how to grind. They know how to basically chip away with the win. So when you look at what he's done, he's got into a system that was already built by previous coaches. And the most important with Leinster is that they have a very strong culture in rugby and their academy system and their junior levels. So he would have only just obviously used his experience in England to fit it into that Irish setup. But going into that Pro 14, then it is much easier to play that kind of rugby than obviously coming to South Africa, the British and Irish. I know. Spoo said obviously head coaches stepping down to the assistant coaches. It doesn't work for all zone with Lancaster. Is Lancaster going to be a dominant figure? What kind of person he is? So that also comes to mind when it comes to those kind of coaching.
Fair for all right there, gentlemen. But Vic, I'm going to come back to you now with the same, with pretty much a similar context about Dave Rennie. He's basically said, let's give Leinster the title this year, even though things had been cut short because of the coronavirus. Do you think in terms of, because I mean, we've seen what the French League One has messed up, because I mean, they're practically running away with the tournament.
Yeah, it's a tough field to swallow, because there were a couple of teams. I think Edinburgh will feel like they were outdone, but Leinster in this competition. They know how to win games. They grind it out. They've been beating everyone everywhere. They can go to any country in any conditions, and because of their strong base of players. Yeah. I mean, Rudy Paige mentioned earlier that you play against, with Pro 14, you play against 28, 29. When you play Leinster, you play against 15 starting players all over the world. So you bound to you playing experience, massive experience. I would say I don't see anything wrong with giving it to them, because they won it last year, and I mean this year they were looking at obviously winning it again. And obviously, Edinburgh would have only been the team that would probably have to stop them. But again, who says that it would have happened? So I think it's only fair. But as long as obviously we just keep it under the English Premiership.
Fair enough. Sisa, big fan of Alistair Coetzee. We've heard news coming out this week that Alistair Coetzee has basically terminated his contract's been terminated with the Japanese side. You've hinted that Alistair Couture might be joining Jake White in Bloemfontein. Tell us a bit about that. I mean, in Pretoria, sorry. Pretoria. Bloemfontein.
Yeah, man. You know, my assertion is really based just off history. The history of the two gentlemen. You know, they've traveled a long road together in coaching in rugby, and also it's also a good story to think about. If you actually sit down and think about it, you know, this guy now has left Japan. His contract ended. We've just seen this week that Potterhiman has left the Blue Bulls union. Jake obviously he's trying to build a new team at Loftus. Who better than a guy with of Super Rugby experience? He's got international experience. He's got global experience, having coached now in Japan under very interesting and with interesting squads as well. So yeah, man. Again, I'm not saying it as fact, but again, it just makes sense.
Not fair.
If you obviously just sit down and think about it. I mean, him going down to PE also makes sense in the greater schemes of things, because obviously he comes from. But hey, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Toby,
it's Toby. Toby,
together before, which should make things a little bit more easier.
That's for me is where the nub of the green is. The way Alistair left the job is probably worse than how Peter de Villiers left.
100%.
Comfortably worse than how Peter de Villiers left the job, and that kind of tells you how sour that parting of ways. Look, things are running differently now to in the past. Rusty's getting a whole lot more sign off on things. All tree, and you better believe that the Bulls would have called Rusty and said, "Look, we want to get in Jake White. What do you think?" Rusty had serious reservations about having Jake White back. I don't think Jake White will be back. So
100%.
I think for me, he doesn't have a bad relationship with Alistair, not at all. Although when they were at the Stormers, the fit worked up to a particular point where Alistair really wanted to be his own man. And to be fair, Alistair got his shot. He got his chances all throughout the ranks. He got a Super Rugby team a number of playoffs, a final. I think he had 3 semi-finals. And they were perennially in the playoffs, perennially winning the conferences when the conference system started. The trick now is whether he is desperate enough to go to the Bulls and actually maybe redeem his CV. And look, it could be a situation where Jake, we know in the back of Jake's mind, an international job will always be him. So at the end of 2023, Jake might have done so well that one last shot for him to make it as an international coach, to try and win the Rugby World Cup again with another country nation, which has never been done before. And then that would probably leave room for Alistair to take over. But is he willing to bide his time for 3 years? That's still to be seen.
Fair. We'll leave that one right there, gentlemen. Thank you very much for your input. Now, the most important part of the show. What I did was I've given the guys teams to analyze and look at our sides. Sisa, you've got Stormers. Vuyo, you have the Sharks. Smoo, you have the Blue Bulls. And Toby's got the Lions. So basically what I wanted to look at, you're looking at the SA franchises. We're looking at improvements. We're looking at disappointments. We're looking at things that they could work out on. We're looking at things like, do allow the players freedom to express themselves? And are there standout players? What are the young prospects looking like, So basically, Sisa, as man, let's hear your points about this opening round of Super Rugby with Dobson.
So, yeah, man, the Stormers have actually been interesting. I was lucky enough to go have look at them during that Superheroes Day, that Vodacom Heroes, and I saw them play against the Sharks. Obviously, that is and was a sort of a warm-up game. I mean, we all know what warm-up games are about. It's just about getting through them and not necessarily about the game. Yeah. But I was impressed with how far they'd sort of come, because they had lost a few sort of senior players, especially some of the World Cup winning guys like Eben and Damien and all of that. I was very impressed at how solid they were in terms of their game plan, in terms of what they were wanting to achieve that day. So just in squad currently, it's a young sort of talented squad that John Dobson sort of has had to sort of sit down and think about how he's going to bring them together. And I think he's done a good job in that, with the coaching style and also the management style he's implemented within that of brothers of wanting to build that type of team culture of that whole Western Cape town. That's the type of environment that he and Rassie have also started sort of introducing slowly into the Springbok setup. Not necessarily going gung ho and want to fit in, but rather introducing a accept everyone for who they are thing. Whether it's people liking to sing Amakwicho before running on a rugby field, whether someone wanting to pray in the corner and keep quiet before a big game. That's the type of sort of environments that I think John Dobson has into the Stormers.
Okay, now I want to ask a few questions. Does a lot of Springboks in his squad, but some people say he's been very conservative in his approach. We look at how the Stormers play. They're not assertive enough from what I see. We've got Willemse, whether he's a fullback or whether he's a fly-off or whether he's a first centre. We've got Augustus, who's shown up, but it's been 7 rounds, but I only saw him prosper maybe against the Sharks. Would you say Dobson has been victive in his approach with the amount of Springboks that he has in his squad?
Phila, I'd say yes, he has been. Although he has obviously in his style of play week in, week out, right? Why? I say that is because, I mean, it's his first year in a very tough competition, right? He's had 7 games now to sort of introduce himself firstly as a coach into the competition and also introduce his
and Auckland Blues.
And then a very, very disappointing Auckland Blues at home. That one, I think, was the most disappointing one for me, where they could have sort of, I mean, they had been on a roll for 4 or 5 weeks.
Yes.
And, they were building momentum where they could have sort of unleashed themselves against the Blues, and I missed an opportunity there. Whether that shows the inexperience of the team, the inexperience of John Dobson at that level, that's another thing. But it truly is a factor to look at when you look at them after 7 weeks of a very disjointed tournament so far, obviously. But from looking at the team, I'm with where John has taken the team so far. I'm very happy with some of the performances of the younger guys so far, especially guys like for example, Juano Augustus.
Yeah.
Again, big guy. A lot is expected of him. Sorry. But obviously he's now introducing himself. He's trying to stay injury free. He's trying to sort of match up the performances of a Peter Steph tutorial. Sia got injured in the first couple of weeks of the tournament. He had to now step up, and I think he against the Sharks, but unfortunately, obviously, we couldn't see the momentum going forward because that was the last game of the tournament.
Okay, last one, Willemse, 10, 12, or 15?
So I've got an interesting view on this. I've got an interesting view on this, and it might not be a popular view. So I see Willemse as a 15, right? Give him space. He has a big boot. he in a Springbok jersey, right?
No.
We thought Jan Saffontein was the answer to let us down miserably, right? Gloriously, actually, right? Why? Because the way they were playing at the Bulls, the way he ended up playing over a period of time, right?
Yeah.
Damon Dialendi, arguably,
he steps off both feet. He's more brilliant at his left, but then he goes from 120 k's an hour into 0. You cannot do that. You can't hit the line. You can't do that. So for me, the most important thing, we have to look at the attributes of the player. He does not do that. Yes, he might be a good kicker. He might be good on the high ball. That's about it. He's never going to, if you're in the 76th minute and you're down by 5 points and try to win the game or draw the game, he's not going to be the player that's going to attack from the back and take it all the way. If you put a Cheslin Kobe at 15, he will do that. He will take it forward. But that's what I'm saying. For me, he doesn't fit at 15. 15 is like one of those specialists, exactly what Wood spoke about earlier. It's one of those special positions. And Damon Williams doesn't fit. So
where do you see him? Where do you see him?
Well, it's either fly off or, but one thing I do like about him, I'll tell you now, for me, he's one of those boys that he needs to be in the front line in terms of the defense. He likes to put in the shoulder, puts his shoulder in the mix. And I believe as a 12, he wouldn't be a bad option based on the fact that the boy is big and he's still probably going to grow a little bit more.
It was very traditional.
It's like
Andre Essays and like Damian Dialende. So I don't know. I reckon Damian Williams of Bravik has mentioned 12 for me. He can hit the line. He's got hands, dream hands.
At the moment, I think someone like Damian, he can take the ball up. The only problem with Damian is that his passing is not where we need to be, which is the reason why I reckon Smooth is looking at someone like Damian.
Williams.
Yeah.
Okay. Toby?
Yeah.
Your peak year, pace-wise, and Damian Williams' peak year, pace-wise, over dash, who makes it across the line first?
Oh, dude. Damian will be seeing my back every time.
There it is.
Toby, I agree. Toby, I agree with you on that one, brother.
There it is. Okay, next. Vuyo, you've got the Sharks. Have a go, mate.
For me, I think there's two things that I've looked at. Obviously, the era of the previous coach and Rob Dupree and the era of Sean. Okay,
yeah.
So if you look at the Sharks were always like they were in contact. They tried to obviously outmuscle you and everything, but they never had a counter-attacking game. We look at stats in Super Rugby, we all know there's a lot more balls kicked. It's the similar to Pro 14. There's a lot more balls kicked, so which means you need to add to your fullback. You need to add a bit of dynamic. He needs to be able to know his basics, but also needs to give you the counter-attacking game that you need. Yeah. So what Sean has done with his coaching staff, they've looked at the game in a holistic point of view. How are you going to score from first phase from Super Rugby? Chances are no. What else gives you an advantage to make an impact? It's turnovers and obviously counter-attack. Okay, if you look at the counter-attack now, so we look at the turnovers. They don't have a fetcher, an outright fetcher, but they can get ball and a shoulder into tackles and rip balls away, and then that creates turnovers. Counter-attack balls, you normally get them, and most probably teams these days don't want to kick ball out because they don't want to go to that line-out situation, knowing that most of teams dominate in competing for line-out. So they're mostly going to kick downfield, which is now where Apelele Fassi comes in. So if they kick downfield and gets the ball at the back, he's got Ngosi working back, he's got Makembe working back, he's got a very smart center with the captain arm. So now, all of a sudden, you've got forced players who can actually bring it on. So if you look at the Sharks' tries this year, probably 80% of the tries came from spilt ball. We call it obviously transition ball. It comes from that. So perfect for what Super Rugby is given at the moment, and I think that's why obviously they're outscoring many teams when it comes to this. Where I would still like to see the Sharks improve within their wingers is to make sure obviously that they start working on those high balls. When they lost to the Hurricanes, 2 or 3 tries from the Hurricanes were cross targeting at those wingers. And that's where, if you are obviously an oppositional team and you're looking at the Sharks, that's where you need to start tightening up. You need to start tightening, making sure that you're working those wings and the cross kicks, and then you need to look at the transition game. Rather kick out for a line-out drive, because they're never going to score from a drive. The stats haven't shown that they score from a drive, instead of kicking long and giving up a fast a chance to attack. And then obviously, like we speak about the culture. If you look at Dave Williams, you look at Van Rensburg, you look at Sean Everett. Yeah, you look at Sean Everett. Those guys are a bit of young characters, and they like to have a good of a nice jaw, although obviously within professionalism. And I think that's what they've brought in. They've brought in a different culture of freedom, and that's where obviously at the moment in terms of that.
Tell me, Vuyo, are you shocked at the way that the Sharks have performed, considering the fact that... But I mean, after what we've seen, they've only lost one game out of the South African franchise sides. I mean, are you impressed, or are you shocked? Have they surprised you in the way they've performed?
Yeah. Okay. So I think when it comes to the forwards of the Sharks, I think you have to look at no one gave them a chance based on their tight five. I think. Yeah. But if you look at their scrum pack, they are able to hold their scrum. They don't have to be dominant, but as long as they hold their scrums, and that's the most important thing. With Thomas du Toit, the tight head, obviously not a renowned tight head, but he's grown to that position like Trevor. So 100%. He's always So it's one of those things where you have to compliment the coaching staff and the forwards coach. And one of the things that we do look at when we analyze teams, you look at the loose trio of the opposition. So you see what they do. When you look at the Sharks trio, those guys complement each other. The one likes the grind, one likes to play with the ball, and one likes to go for the breakdowns.
So their fullback who joins in the line at pace, which is quite important. Would you agree that those are the key factors to their success this season?
Yeah, I think when it comes to obviously their success this season, it started with the defense. They've sorted out the defense in terms of how they come off the line and what type of tackles they're doing. So the tackles, they're trying to stop people and pushing them backwards. They're trying to rip balls. So most of the time, that works in your favor when you're working in the structure of transition. And they've worked a lot on the transition, right? And if you with the obviously the box kicks and a good chase line, it's almost like they'll understand that as soon as that ball is about to hit the ground, we need to be scrambling. We need to be fighting for that ball as hard as we can, so that into our transition game. And that's what Dave Williams is always big on, is a transition game. So they're a lot on that. And I think, again, it has to be the players that's embracing the game plan that they've been given. And at the moment, they obviously executing quite well.
And no more questions for the guys?
Just a comment on the Sharks. It's great to see a team and a sort of plan. So for me, looking at them, I think the one big factor that Sean Everett had in the beginning of or at the top of the season was to get this team as fit as possible, right? And I think he's achieved that. If I was ever a coach, I had sort of like, I don't want to call it a weak link to my squad, but let's call it a weak link, which is right, my tight five. I make sure that they do the basics pretty well. They fit as possible so that they can finish a game, they can finish a season.
Yeah,
and that's true. And that's exactly what they've done, right? Those guys, like David said, those guys are at the level that they need to be. They're not dominating, but they're holding their own. Their loose forwards are brilliant. Their back line, which is their force, is obviously brilliant. So for me, that's where he's sort of got it right. He's got the guys as fit as possible to be able to play the type of game which is based on the defense and the counter attack.
I had one thought on the Sharks. Bravik, how do you see the halfbacks at the season that Louis Schroeder was the handbrake in that link between the forwards and the backs? We've got a number 8 like Uskumuzo Noche. And I understand the reservation, untested youngster like Usanele Nohamba, but look, it's never been done before to have a rookie come in and or your Marshall at number 9, and then have his SA under-20 teammate, Jaden Hendrickse, on the bench, who they make very good box kicker. Both of them can kick for the line and they can kick for goal, which is sort of unheard of to have 2 scrum halves for poles, a fly half that can kick for poles, and a fullback that can kick for poles. Just crazy. But anyway, do you share, or do you have a different view on the number 9 dynamic at the Sharks?
I think if you look at the first 7 games, what they've done, I believe it's what any conservative coming in coach would have done. So if you look at then how they've given Sanele a chance to get into that starting lineup, I think for me, most importantly was the tour with Louis, starting Louis and Nohamba on the bench. Coming back to South Africa is giving that number 9 jersey to Sanele, slowly phasing out Louis and bringing in the Hendricks. I think for me, that's the way that I would have done it. But again, who knows what Sean's Everett's mandate is from the big bosses, because Louis was their captain, is probably one of their highest paid players. So again, it's dynamic that we have to consider. But for me, like I say, I would have toured with Louis starting, because I believe Louis is a stable player. But giving Nohamba the chance and then slowly phasing out Louis probably would have been the best idea.
Cool. Great stuff.
Quickly, Vic, as well from my side. Talking about the Sharks I think have been very well all-rounded team so far. Backs are very exciting. It's a very nice team to watch at the moment. But like you guys had made a little bit of a problem with their forwards, that we thought maybe they wouldn't shoot on all cylinders. You have said that they've been scrumming quite well. But look at some of their stats. What was quite interesting to me was that in the lineouts, they're the worst performing side when it comes to lineouts. 6%, I think, win rate. Do you think that, I think for you as a coach, Vic, is that something you would look at, exploiting on if you were a team playing against them? Because for me, a position, lineouts are quite key in any game. And as something you would look into and say, maybe let's attack that specific point to form a weakness on the team, because one of the things people look at, hooker position, it is a specialist position. And no hooker who's playing Super Rugby, level, is expected to be losing so many, lineouts. But for me, it's not about whether that player can't throw. There's no there's no player in that, who's at that stage in his life who can't throw a ball. It's basically more of a type of thing. That's what you work on. No, Phila. It's what you want, confidence. If a player loses confidence in his first 2 lineouts and for that game, regardless what happens, if he hits 5, 6 lineouts straight in a row, he's going to keep going. So for me, I think a lot of teams should, where you see there's a weakness there, you try and exploit that weakness in that first 5-10 minutes, the hooker will be gone for the game. Your thoughts, Vic?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I mentioned in the beginning, is that you have to look at the team strengths. So if you remember, I spoke about the counter-attack from the Sharks. That you cannot doubt. It's brilliant. So if you're going to try to get them into that lineup, which is exactly what you want, so teams should be aiming at kicking out. Doesn't matter how far it is, kicking out, making sure that it goes out. They can't get the counter-attack. And also when for example, it's your time to exit in your own half, not even Apelele the chance to even counter-attack. So almost like hitting those grabbers on the touchlines just to go out. It doesn't matter how far it is, just to go out, so that they go into that lineup. Because like you said, the lineup is their weakest point of attack. So why not exploit them? And if you look at kickers trying to kick off against them, you should be targeting at kicking the ball in a position where it forces them to rather grind it out instead of obviously just get back and then having a free run.
To be fair, they did lose Botha, who was quite an experienced lock forward for the French clubs. But obviously they've lost experience, like many of our South African teams over the past couple of years. Obviously, it's a rebuilding phase. You've got Andrews and you've got this other youngster who used to play for SA Schools that's come through as well. So hopefully they can keep that talent, and so that they can build the experience they require for the line-outs, and they're scrumming as from to start attacking. Okay, now moving to the next one. Smooth, you are up in Pretoria. You are ready for the... We are ready for the money, Libok. Go ahead, mate.
I don't know how I ended up being the Bulls man, but it seems like that's my lot in life is the Bulls this year. But I've watched a lot of Bulls. I covered them this year on them throughout the year. And I think from day one, from the first game of the competition, I didn't think that persisted from the time they lost to the Sharks. Then they blanked out, almost blanked out two weekends in a row. It was clear that this Bulls team is definitely at rock bottom. But they were low when they lost the Victors and the Bakis and the Danny Rousseaus and all those guys and the Fouries. Possibly, this is it. This is like ground zero. This is 2000, 2001, 2002 Super Rugby right now. That's what's happening at this very moment. Having said that, you must Heineken 2002 year, they had a terrible Super Rugby season. I think they won 1 or 2 games, but it's shockingly bad. But in the Currie Cup, they won the Currie Cup. So he managed to find sort of fragments to build on. And then obviously from there, they just kicked on and dominated. I think the Bulls are there, and with someone like Jake White, a renowned builder of teams, I think they just at that precipice. The question I have about them is whether or not they will retain the right players. Look, winning 1 game in 6 matches this season, not great. Yeah. I think it's contributed to Pote Human having been put down kindly. I think it was a mercy release for Pote because he's a servant of the Bulls and has been for many years. But team having only 6 points, they lost to the Reds in that final game a week after their first win, where they had their best season.
Yeah.
It kind of means for me that the team mentally isn't drilled well enough to be able to step on the gas when they're doing well. I remember hark back to the first half against the Reds, off a win in South Africa. They don't have a bye. They get to the Reds. They're leading by 17 points away at the Reds. Everything is just going. Then one thing happens just before halftime. I think it's a tackle by Liam Wright, and he stops Roscoe Speckman about 5 meters from the try line. And the turnaround is like a 40-point turnaround from 100%. That point. They don't do anything over the line after that. That for me speaks to lack of experience, some shortages in mental strength. And to be honest, I don't think a team with Henry Pollard, Dwayne Vermeulen, Jesse Creel, Arges, Neyman, Rodi, I don't think that team collapses in that situation. Yeah. Looking back on their season, their usual stats aren't so bad. Their lineout isn't bad. They are a 90% lineout team. They were 88% in. Their try scoring is very poor. They tied 13th on 14 tries for the season. Their offloading is very, very poor. In a competition like Super Rugby that's very, very tight, your offload game is pretty much what you live and breathe on to create opportunities. But it all goes back to the personnel. I think for me, what Jake needs to do is to pick the spine. And for me, the spine is your Warwick Galant at the back, your halfback combo, Mani Libok, as well as Ambrose Papier with Ivan Van Zyl there in the mix. And your
Who starts? Who starts? Van Zyl or Papier?
On the balance of the games, Papier had less games, but more of an impact. And he's a player whose chances better. I think Ivan Van Zyl is like stock standard for me. He's like your coach's dream because he's not going to do anything outside. You know what
outside the game plan.
Yeah, he's not going to. He's not outside the box. Whereas Papier, in his first start, when they won against the Highlanders, he got the first midfield break clean of the game, but they couldn't finish it. And then at Brisbane, he got the first try, and that's something they weren't able to get consistently with Ivan van Zyl before. Definitely Papier, and his understanding with Manie Libbok is greater because they played together at SA schools and SA under-20s 2 years straight. So they know each other very, very well.
100%.
And those things really factor in. It's just a matter of, is there trust enough in Libbok? And look, Libbok is very, very rough around the edges. By no means. There's a period they lost, I think it was the Jaguares. I didn't expect them to beat the Jaguares, but when he came on, they were still chasing the game, still within a try or two of getting in touch on the scoreboard. And then you got a few penalty kicks that didn't go to touch. For me, again,
small things.
Mone is not going to do that. Mone is not a good, flashy player, but he's going to kick the ball out when he has to. And he missed a couple of goal kicks. I think for me, it's just working on the things that are needed by the coach so that you can have wiggle room, to do the things that innately come to you, your fancy stuff or your flag or the intuitive stuff. But you don't get a license to do that if you don't tick the coach's boxes first.
So now of spine and experience, then do you not start Monet staying ahead of Libbok, and Libbok comes off the bench and basically builds himself into a star?
No, you're building a new spine here because you're looking at your kind of player. You can play Monet for the kind of game that you think will require Monet, but for me, Libbok should be gobbling up bulk of the minutes, even if it's a 60-20 minute split between Monet and Libbok. But if they were able to have the starts that they had against the Reds and take it into the sheds and then maintain their concentration for the first 10-15 minutes of the second half.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't bring in a Monet, shut the game completely. That's right.
True.
That's game management at its best. You get a 14-point lead, 10-point lead. Anything is, you put in a Monet, then what you're doing is you defend, wait for them to make mistakes, you take the 3 points, or you play in their half. That's it. You do that for the last 20 minutes, you will win 90% of your games. As long as you go into the break and the 10 minutes before, the 10 minutes after, you've maintained your concentration and hopefully maintained the lead. The last 20 minutes, you can dictate the tempo of that game. It doesn't all like how the Springboks play the second half. It doesn't have to be all fancy in the last 20 minutes of the game. It's just about having the control in the minutes of the game.
Granted. Gents, any questions for the Blue Bulls, the Blue Buller?
Just one thing from me. I would like to know from Sbu, you've covered the Bulls. Don't you think the Bulls, when we look at this year, because obviously we don't know what Jake is going to be doing next season. When you look at the Bulls this year, Conor Hendricks, 7th player, Russell Swiftman, 7th player, Warwick's player, Manie Libbok could possibly play 7th. If we look at those guys, don't you think they would have benefited with a similar structure to the Shark, that counter-attack transitional game?
100%.
Yeah, look, they could have if the X was a whole lot better. I think also what makes the Sharks the best team for me, the best other is the fact that it isn't just that you put those players together. It's that you've given them wiggle room to where they want to play. Like Skhumbuzo Noche isn't there to be Dan Dupré. He is Skhumbuzo Noche. And the mentality at the Bulls is if you lose it, if you don't have Dwayne Vermeulen, they're looking for the next Dwayne Vermeulen, looking at then having their 8 playing a different way to what they lost, then changing the game plan accordingly. It's a matter of we've lost Dwayne. Where's the next Dwayne? Let's put in Muller Ace. I think the fact that they brought in a guy like Andries Ferreira, the former Lions lock that went to the Hurricanes, and I think he failed medical there and came to the Bulls. What they saw was that we're missing muscle mass or just bodily mass. So let's get an Andries Ferreira who's big. That's it. He's just big. And they saw very but a little late that you need a little bit more than that on the rugby field. And then your Ian Groenewald started coming in, your Ruan Nokia started, because it just